Okay, good day, good people. Let us look at kinematic. All right, what is kinematic? Is the branch of mechanics concerned with the motion of objects without reference to the force which causes the motion. On kinematic, we are dealing with motion, meaning we are dealing with motion. They said it's a concern with the motion of object without the reference to a force. We all know that an object, for it to be able to move, there must be a force behind that object that causes the object to move. But in this case, on this topic, we are not interested in dealing with the force that causes motion. We will be dealing with the cause of motion when we are doing dynamics. That is chapter 3, dynamics. Now on dynamics, we are dealing with the cause of motion. Hence the Newton laws, they come to play, whereby we look into the Newton laws. But here we are basically dealing with motion. We are looking at motion specifically, at motion. That's what we are looking at. Now kinematic is the science of describing the motion of objects, describing the motion of objects using words, diagrams, numbers, graphs, and equations. And we will be covering all those elements which are being listed in that kinematic, is the science of describing the motion of objects. We are describing the motion of object using words, diagrams, and we will be using those elements. Now, we therefore have to define motion. What is motion? Motion or movement means the change in position of an object, meaning when you are at position A, moving to point B, you can tell that there's a change of position from point A to point B, from blue to black. There's a change in position. You can tell there's a change in position. Change of position from point A, B, C, it's called distance. When you are changing a position from point A to B going to C, it is called distance. That which you would have covered from A to B, it is called what? Distance. You can't change position and not cover a certain distance or displacement. Now when you are traveling from A, B, C, you would have covered a certain distance. But when you are changing position from A to C, it is called displacement. It is called what? A displacement. Now, since we will be looking at motion, or rather since kinematic, it deals with motion. Now, those are the things that we'll be looking at on kinematics, the change of position from point A to point B. We'll be looking at when you change position from point A to point B, you covered what distance or displacement. You were traveling at what speed from point A to point B, the speed that you were traveling at. We would look at the velocity that you were traveling at. Now, by the way, there's a difference between speed and velocity. There's a difference between distance and displacement. Now, we will be looking at those things as you are changing position from point A to point B. Because when you are changing position, those things, they take place. you were traveling at which distance from point A to point B? You were traveling at what speed from point A to point B till point C? We will be looking at those things. Now let's go to the definitions of kinematic distance. Distance is the total distance traveled on a winding route. Now, if you can check here, as you are changing position from point A to point B to point C, that's a winding route. You are winding, you don't have specific direction. When we thought that you are going northeast, you change direction to what? To southeast. Now you are on the winding distance. You are winding, you are on the winding route. That is the definition of what? Of distance. Now, is the total distance traveled on a winding route along a straight track from the starting point to the end of the route. Right. From the starting point till the end of route. You can tell this is the winding. A winding, it is something like you are winding, doing the spiral like. Okay, that's a winding. Right. Let's look at what's this? Distance is the straight line distance from the starting point. It's a straight line distance from the start point to the end in a specific direction. Now check this, look at this. From A to my pen, it's going bizarre. It's going bizarre on me now. Why, I don't know. Right. From A to B, it's a straight line. You have a starting point and an end point in a specific direction. This is a starting point, straight line to point B. Starting point, specific direction, and the end point. Now it is called a displacement. It is called a displacement. Is the start line distance from the start point to the end in a specific direction, regardless of the route taken. Now, like I said, that there's a difference between speed, velocity, and all that, because when you are covering the distance and the displacement, you will be traveling at a certain speed. Right. Speed is the rate at which body moves along its path. Velocity is the rate of displacement in a specific direction. Scalar, it's a quantity, and you therefore need to know what is distance. Is distance a scalar or a vector? Is displacement a scalar or a vector? Is speed a scalar or a vector? Is velocity a scalar or a vector? Now, the definition of scalar, it's a quantity that has only magnitude. It's a quantity that has only magnitude. Vector, it's a quantity that has both magnitude and direction. Resultant velocity, the definition of resultant velocity, the resultant velocity of an object is the sum of its individual vector. Resultant, the single vector, that it is the sum of a given set of vectors. A resultant is the single vector that is the sum of a given set of vectors. Right? Now, in kinematics, in short, we will be determining what a vector, using words, numbers, diagram, and all that. That's what we will be doing in kinematics. Please know those definitions that we have on your kinematics, because the definitions that we have, they are possible questions for exams. Thank you, good people.